Calculate the number of moles of oxygen atoms in 64 grams of oxygen atoms. Right? Now, keyword over here, what I need to be aware of is moles. Oh, sorry, moles of atoms. Atoms की बात हो रही है, ठीक है? You need the mass of 1 mole. Okay, they're already telling us it's 16 grams per mole. But if this other part wasn't given, you need to know what they're talking about. So molecules की बात होती तो that would be a different case. Atoms की बात हो रही है. We have to count the number of atoms. ठीक है? So what's the MR for the atom of an oxygen? So atom is, if I look at the periodic table, MR for oxygen is 16. It's also over here, granted. ठीक है? Now I have to find out the moles of atoms in 64 grams of oxygen. 64, that's mass over, I actually should write mass over MR. Mass over, I have the worst A in the world. ठीक है, mass over MR. And that equals to, well, 64 over 16. I think that comes out to be 4. 4 what? 4 moles of oxygen atoms. And we're done with this question, but I just want to add, if it didn't say atoms, if it just meant oxygen, right? Oxygen, very likely it was talking about the number of molecules of oxygen. So it wasn't talking about O, it was talking about O2. So once you use O2, once you're clarified, you're talking about oxygen atoms or oxygen molecule being O2. If you've clarified you're talking about O2, then you use that MR. O2 is going to be, and we've learned how to calculate this, it's just going to be 32, 2 of oxygen atoms. Alright, calculate the number of moles of chlorine molecules. Alright, a chlorine molecule is Cl2. Now these questions are very forgiving, they're telling you molecules or atoms. They're being very clear because they're example questions, they're trying to be easy. In 142 grams of chlorine gas. ठीक है, straightforward. So moles is, okay, let's back up a bit. Let's talk about the MR of chlorine, Cl2. MR of Cl2 is going to be, give me a second, my app is undergoing Parkinson's, just fidgets a lot. Okay, MR is going, it's 2 chlorines, so that's 35.5 times 2 because each chlorine is 35.5, so that's 71. ठीक है? MR पता चल गया? Now it's the easy bit where you just go moles is equal to mass over mR, right? And that is equal to 142 and the MR is 71. And I think that comes out to 2 moles of chlorine gas or molecules. ठीक है? Let's continue. Let me turn on my pan. Let me zoom if I can. I cannot. Give me a second. For our next question, we have to calculate the number of moles for copper sulfate hydrated or 5H2O in 100 grams of solid. No easy, no biggie, right? The MR for copper sulfate, we went over this, is going to be the MR for copper sulfate, then add 5 waters to it, 5 water molecules to it, because it has 5 water molecules to it. This entire thing is just supposedly 1 molecule, right? Let's go, let's try that out. Copper sulfate is going to be CuS, just add 4 O's plus 5 times, I'm gonna group water together just to make my life slightly easier. Copper is, if I'm not too wrong, 64, sulfur is 32, 4 times 16 of each oxygen is 64, and 5 times 18 is 5 times, well, I don't really care, I think it's 90. But summing this up, I think it comes close to 250. The MR for copper sulfate hydrated is 250. Now I want to figure out the moles. The moles is going to be, I want a different color. Okay, the mass over the MR. The mass is what? The question says 100 grams and the MR is 250. So that's 50 times 2, 50 times 5. So it's 2 over 5. 2 over 5 in fraction world is, in decimal world is 0.4 moles. Okay? That's 0.4 moles. Alright, now we have a reverse problem where we have to calculate the mass of something knowing the moles of it. Well, sulfur dioxide, the MR we still need to know because we're still using the equation. Moles equals to the mass over the MR. And if I figure out the MR for sulfur dioxide, then I can easily find out the mass for 3 moles of sulfur dioxide. Okay. So let's start. Get out of my way. There's a huge app interface on top of this video, so it's really annoying. I'm sorry about that, but I'm just gonna complain about it anyway. So the MR for SO2 is sulfur is 32, then 2 oxygens are also 32, so that's a total of 32 plus 32, 64. Okay. The next part is I have to find out 3 moles. Well, I can just do this in my head. If 1 mole is 64, 3 moles are going to be 3 times 64. So 64 times 3 is 60 times 3 is 180 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 188, 192. 192. Okay. And if you want to do it the equation way, moles is equal to mass, oh my god, mass again, third times the term, mass over MR. 3 equals to my unknown mass over the MR, which is 64. I'll make a line here like that, a clumsy line. And did I say a line? 64 times 3 is 192. Pretty sure it's 192. Okay. Now we're picking up some speed, and the MR for Na2S2O3 is going to be, well, 2 times 23 plus 2 times 32 plus 3 times 16, right? And that comes out to 158, I believe. Whereas 5 H2Os are going to be 5 times 18, because 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen make up to 18, and that is 90. Okay? I add these two values, I get 15 plus 90 is 15, 24, 248. That's my MR. To find out the mass is just a simple as multiplying right now. Mass equals to number of moles times the MR, where the number of moles are 0.05 times 248, and that comes out to, I should have calculated this before, 248 times 0.05, 12.4 grams.